Hello and welcome to EBAday 2020. I'm Hannah Wallace, and kindly calling in to talk to us about payments disruption and modernization is Sulabh Agarwal from Accenture. So hello Sulabh, thank you very much for calling in today.
Thank you, Hannah. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great to have you on. So yes, this is a really big topic, especially for this year's event, because the payments industry has challenged and changed itself for many years, but now in particular, we're seeing even more disruptive forces at work, aren't we? So that's really where I want to start. Could you highlight some of the more significant forces you're seeing today and maybe talk us through how transformative they're likely to be? Let's start there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of change on every dimension of payments, right? If you look at the interaction between the consumers or the corporates with the financial institution or the payment service provider, there's a big change in that whole interaction itself. And then if you look at the core infrastructure or capabilities of the payment service provider, that's going through a seismic change in itself as well. So if I just cover them one by one, in terms of the front end changes, I mean, we've had Uber-like experience or Amazon one click for some time now. But if you look at the whole ecosystem, that's going in that direction in terms of having completely embedded customer experience, whether it is buying a coffee at Starbucks on a loaded card, or whether it is paying through your Facebook social account. It's like more and more experiences are going to be more embedded within the user journey. And I think what has happened post COVID is that these types of journeys are only going to accelerate more and more because, as you can see, the whole movement from cash to digital has increased significantly. Everyone is buying online and shopping online, and what that means is that those user journeys are increasing. On the back end side or the capability side, there's lots of changes, right? Cloud is probably one of the major disruptors, and some of the, I mean, newer payment service providers, the Stripes, the Adyen's of the world, and TransferWise of the world, they're all new tech, right? So the incumbents are also needing to change themselves, evolve themselves to a new tech, which may include cloud, a cloud native tech stack, a more efficient end-to-end zero operations capability, which is kind of the other big change which is happening.
Sure. So taking into account all of those transformative forces, what do you think is at stake for payment providers that don't react decisively? Do you think, what do you think sort of standing in the way of an effective response? What about that?
I mean, lots is at stake, right? So if you look at the P&L of a large incumbent, a lot of it is hidden value from payments, and it is those revenue pools that were quite significant, whether it is, say, international remittances, whether it is the cards and the acquiring side of the equation, which are the ones, or even point of sale lending and the new unicorns are coming up in those spaces. I think there's a significant impact, or I would say threat and an opportunity coming up as a result of the new forces. I mean, going forward, there are two options, right? One is you become a scale player. Like if you see there's so much merger and acquisition within the payment space that we have seen over the last 2-3 years, and this is multi-billion-dollar investments that have happened or acquisitions that have happened. And the approach there is you're trying to get to a scale where your cost is going down at a faster pace than actually the price which is going down in the market. And then the only other like strategy there is to price for value. So how do you create propositions out in the market which where you can not just price for the transaction itself, but actually provide a more holistic value and solve the customer problem, whether it is with respect to fraud, collections, accounting, marketing, loyalty, whatever those things are. It's about taking those propositions in and solving the client problem so that you can actually price for the value that you're delivering to the consumer or to the client, instead of just pricing for the transaction where it's only one directional in terms of where the prices are going.
Sure, sure. Well, that leads me quite nicely into my final question, because I understand that you've just released some exciting new research at Accenture that shows banks might not be getting optimal returns from their investment in payments modernization. So I'd love to hear a bit more about some of the findings from this research to support this, and perhaps you could give some advice on what they can do differently to remedy it. What about that?
I mean, one of the big findings from the research, and we'll be publishing the whole report, is that payments is a priority, right? Everyone is investing money in payments in most geographies, whether it's Europe, Asia, or US, and everyone is embarking on big journeys to transform their payments infrastructure. But a lot of that infrastructure or infrastructure change is driven for regulatory compliance. So, and what we have also seen, and which was quite evident in the research, is there's lots of solutions rather than a full overhaul of the infrastructure. While that is the reality on the ground, if you ask most execs, so we interviewed about 120 execs globally, and we asked them the question as to what is most important to them in terms of the payments modernization. They all said revenue growth was coming up as the biggest thing which was important. Whereas the actual reality, if you ask them what has been happening and how much of that is supporting revenue growth, is kind of missing. So that link is missing. And I think if I was to leave one takeaway, I think it's more about thinking about how you're going about the transformation journey and how that will enable the organization to actually grow in addition to solving for the compliance problem. And I think there are various aspects to looking at that problem and how you go about in that journey, including the whole organizational model. If the part of the organization that's making the decision and running the program is also incentivized to think about it more holistically and how the propositions are being enabled, and I mean, this is where the ownership of payments, a perennial question which we keep asking, right? How should payments be a P&L, a virtual P&L, a completely siloed part in various organizations? But then how the whole program is structured and governed and prioritized is also a key part of how organizations should think about it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, some very good advice in that response there, and I urge anyone who wants to learn more to go to that research. But Sulabh, for now, we'll leave it there. I hope you enjoy the rest of the event, and thank you so much for calling in and sharing your insights. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Pleasure is mine as well.